Throughout the entirety of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, we never see any elven children, despite our protagonists visiting the elves in both Rivendell and Lothlorien. In order to understand why, we'll have to explore the life cycle of the elves, how they marry, how they reproduce, and how long it takes for an elf to be born, as well as how fast, or rather slow, they age. Not to mention the consequences of the birth for the mother. To the elves, the act of physical intimacy itself is marriage. Once they engage in it, they are married, and it is this act that signifies their union. They are usually married relatively early in their lives, within their first century, and the marriage between two elves demands approval from their parents unless the couple is already of age, with the elves being considered mature at approximately 100 years of age. Marriage for the elves is something deeply bonding and spiritual, and considering their immortality and the eternal nature of elven marriage, it is perhaps the most important decision of their lives. Elves marry only for love, and no other factor outside of love, like family politics, are ever considered, and as such, arranged marriages do not exist for the elves. When two young elves wish to commit to each other for eternity, they are first betrothed for a year, and they exchange 2 silver rings to signify their promise to each other. Betrothals are rarely ever broken, and when the time for the union to become official approaches, great feasts are held in the couple's respective households, before the bride and the groom are blessed by their parents in a solemn ceremony, one of the very few times in which the name of Eru Ilúvatar is ever uttered. Following this, they remove their silver rings of betrothal and give each other their golden rings of marriage. After all of the feasts and the blessings and the exchanging of rings, the couple is still not married. They are considered together officially in marriage only after the consummation. Because of how interconnected the idea of marriage is with the sexual act, the idea of extramarital sex as well as adultery is not only unthinkable but impossible, as it is that act by itself that creates a marriage. Lastly, regarding marriage itself, the idea of remarrying is also impossible, as elves are together for life and their life is never ending. Divorce does not exist because an elf would never wish to leave their partner, as they are literal soulmates. If a partner dies, they can come back, and the only exception to the premise of remarriage occurs when the dead partner refuses to be re-embodied, and as such, their partner is left without their soulmate. Finwë, the father of Fëanor, was that exception when he was permitted to marry Idris following the death of his first wife Miriel and her refusal to return to Valinor. As you can probably understand, due to the elven understanding of intercourse, any children that would have otherwise been produced from outside of marriage are immediately removed from the equation. But what of the elven children that are born within a marriage, which is all of them? Elves love physical intimacy because of how special it is to share it with their partner, and most importantly, they love the miracle that are children. Not only do they adore the joy they give them, but bringing their kids up is perhaps the happiest time of their eternal lives. They usually have a maximum of 4 children in total throughout their eternity together, and the firstborn usually comes within the first 200 years of the marriage. Each child after that takes even longer, and with every birth, the wish to procreate decreases instinctively. This is because, already from their nature, the elves do not experience lust as humans do, and although they love their partner, their wish to engage in sex is low to begin with, and gets even lower with every century and every child that passes. As such, once they do have a few children, procreation for the elves is naturally ceased. Pregnancy for the elves is different than that of humans. Instead of 9 months, elven pregnancy lasts for 12, and the birth itself is incredibly draining and dangerous for the mother on a spiritual level as opposed to physical, as if a part of their very soul passes to their offspring. Curiously, in some of his writings, as revealed in The Nature of Middle-earth, elven pregnancies lasting from 8 all the way to 108 years have also been mentioned. All of these reasons are why there are not billions of immortal elves around at the time of The Lord of the Rings, as their reproductive rate is slow and their original numbers when they were first created by Eru Ilúvatar were only 144. Regardless, once an elven child is born, they start to grow at both a slow and rapid pace. Although physically they may not reach their full potential until they are at least 50 years old and their complete physical development by year 100, intellectually the story is very different. Already from their first year, elven babies can talk, sing, and dance, and as the years pass, their mind develops considerably faster than that of a human. This trend is not followed by their bodies, however, and at an age when a mortal man would have reached his physical peak in his 20s, an elf at that same time may only still appear around 7 or 8 years old. This entire period, until their coming of age at 100 years old, is the first out of 3 cycles within an elf's lifespan, and it is called Olmie, the period of growth. Based on everything so far, it would make sense that no elven children are ever seen in Tolkien's stories. Whereas with the Hobbit children or the children of Rohan and of Gondor, the young played a role within the wider story he was trying to portray, Tolkien saw no need for elven children to be included in the story, as they may not have added anything of value. This is because, through the few children that we do see within the Lord of the Rings, such as the character of Bergil in Minas Tirith, we see the consequences of war and the wider themes of innocence and its battle against the evils of the world. On the other hand, elves within the story serve a different role, and in my opinion, an addition of elven children would have been a worse way to explore these themes than the more relatable humans. Even though some are probably out there, they were not seen, and the facts surrounding elven biology and culture supported this literary decision in a way that made sense. Therefore, if the elves can live forever, and they have already lived for tens of thousands of years by the time of our story, and the only time you can tell them apart is within their first century of existence, it makes sense why we would not only be unable to see them, but also our characters through which the story is told would be unable to tell them apart. A massive thank you to my channel members, and thank you very much for watching.